Hi guys, my name is Belle Fleming. I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and you are listening to my podcast called Chatterbox Cinema, where we talk about TV and movies. I am here with my good friend, where we are going to talk about LGBTQIA plus representation in movies and TV. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah Crowe. I use she, her pronouns, and I am bisexual.
All right, so both of us identify as bisexual, and obviously, growing up, I feel like as kids, we didn't really have a lot of representation in media. It was kind of something that was very taboo as kids.
Definitely. I don't even remember, learning what it means to be gay. I think it might have been, I watched an episode of Modern Family with, my parents, and they had to explain that, these two men are, they're gay, they're together. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. I, as a child, blindly accepted things, though, so I did not question it. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I remember in elementary school, it was, a swear to say, you're gay. So anytime I would say gay, I'd be like, oh, it means, happy. Oh, I'm happy. Yeah. And I guess, besides, the couples, I wasn't even thinking of Modern Family. Because that was considered, more of an adult show.
Yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to watch that until, middle school.
Yeah. I remember, this is something that I find hilarious, looking back on. When I was a kid, still in elementary school, I don't remember how old exactly, I think I heard something about, lesbians, and I thought it was the coolest thing, because I didn't know anything about it. I was like, oh my god, you can marry your best friend, you can marry girls, that's so, cool. So sick. Yeah. And now looking back all these years later, I'm like, that should have been a sign.
Right. I mean, it is interesting because I'm like, oh, I didn't find out till middle school that I liked girls. But then you go back and you think about the things you thought as a kid, and it's like, oh, that there was earlier signs. I just was too innocent to really know, because they never teach you about those things. They always are like, oh, she's got a boyfriend. All your gal pals were friends. The infamous phrase gal pals. They were your friends, and then any guy friends you had were could have been considered boyfriends. Yeah. Or potential boyfriends. So, the reason why I think representation in TV and movies is so important is because, as kids, we were talking about, I watched a lot of TV as a kid. I don't know about you. I watched a lot of TV as a kid. Lots of movies, lots of cartoons. And I feel like there was really nothing like that. At least, realistic representation.
Yeah, definitely not in kind of, children's media. There's absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. As I got older, there's maybe a few things, but even then it's, oh, the gay best friend, or, just not good representation, you know?
Yeah, it was always so, if there was something that was considered, quote-unquote gay, it was kind of used as, a comedic effect. Yeah. I think the only legit representation that I could think of from what I saw as a kid was in Looney Tunes, when Bugs Bunny would get in drag. I don't think, but the thing is, it wasn't considered drag. It was just, it was him trying to, seduce, the hunter or something, or, try to distract the hunter from shooting him because it was wabbit season.
Yeah, or, The Lion King, Timon, do you want me to get in drag and do the hula?
Yes. Yes.
That's it.
It was supposed to be, super funny, and, oh, that's so funny. They're, being, feminine or whatever.
Look how silly this is. Yeah. A boy dressing as a girl. And it's that's... It's kind of not great.
Because when because it is supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be, a thing that's it's comedic.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously when you see that, like, a lot of people are going to think, like, they're not going to take you seriously. Like, I think, like, even today, like, for example, drag,
mm-hmm.
when people say, like, they're into drag or they are a drag queen, they're not necessarily taken as seriously because in the media, it is considered a joke. And I think it does come from, like, watching those cartoons as a kid and being like, oh, yeah, that was a funny thing that this character did.
Definitely.
So obviously, like, drag isn't necessarily considered a serious thing. I mean, yeah, it's an entertaining thing. You can go to drag shows and that's considered entertaining. But it's not, like, people don't necessarily see it as a career. It's just this funny thing that people do from time to time.
And it's not as mainstream as other kind of forms of entertainment, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think just, like, strictly, like, just characters being, like, gay or, like, bisexual. Obviously, I think even as society, like, kind of stepping back from media, but just in general, the terms of, like, bisexual, pansexual,
mm-hmm.
like, people are still getting used to those terms being used. So for a character to display or not be straight, they're just strictly gay. You know what I mean?
Or it's kind of like they don't really say it. Like,
yeah.
I know, I think it was Bones. It's a TV show.
Yeah.
The character Angela is, like, seen as heterosexual for most of the show, and then it's revealed that, like, she's had girlfriends before, and she started dating a woman. Mm-hmm. They never say the word bisexual, though.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, that's weird. She's experimented. And it's like,
right. It is very interesting. Like, I guess I can think of, like, Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Friends was very weird about gay representation.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can think of, like, Ross, his first wife, like, was a lesbian.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the show did break a lot of boundaries. Apparently, like, I think they were the first show, like, live-action show that had a gay wedding.
Yeah.
Because it was his wife Carol's, and I think her name is Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Susan and Carol's wedding was filmed, and that was, like, a huge deal.
Yeah.
But I do think that is interesting, though, that, like, she was just gay.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, she was in a very, serious, committed relationship with Ross, and it seemed like they liked each other. So
that's another like, kind of issue of, like, you could say, like, oh, it's just, like, compulsory heterosexuality, where it's like, straight is the only option, so guess I'll go with that until they're like, oh no.
Right.
But I don't know, it still is very black and white, kind of. The spectrum of sexuality is never really shown.
Yeah. So I do think that is very interesting. Like, even if a character was presented as gay, it was very rarely said. Like, the term was very rarely said. And then if a character was gay, they wouldn't actually get that much screen time. Mm-hmm. That was something, like, I noticed. Like, they were very minor characters.
Yeah.
It was never the main cast where there was a gay character. So in terms of the representation in the media, there is a organization called GLAAD, GLAAD, and which, if I'm correct, it stands for Gay and Lesbian Allegiance Against Defamation, which is just an organization that pretty much breaks down the representation of LGBT representation in TV shows and movies. There's the GLAAD Awards that I believe is connected to, the GLAAD Media Award. I'm currently working on my Google Chrome right now to make sure I get everything correct. But yeah, so they have the GLAAD Media Award, which is talking about, it's basically another form of, like, movie awards and, like, television shows. But yeah, so GLAAD, they did a article where one of the people that works for GLAAD, his name is Rich Ferraro. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. I'm so sorry, Rich, if I did. So he talks about how, over the course of time, how the TV representation has grown and what still needs to be done. Because I personally believe that there still is growth.
Oh, definitely.
That needs to be done. I don't think that's out of the question.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at that peak where it's like, chef's kiss. We've done it, folks. We did it. We did it.
We did it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
We did it.
We've solved homophobia.
So, this article, I believe, was written in like 2019, so late 2019, early 2020, so fairly recent. Mm-hmm. And he does mention earlier in the article, like over the past years, there has been definitely growth. I think we definitely have introduced the concept of a character being gay or lesbian more, like it is more prominent. Also, he mentions, however, we have expanded, but we also have seen growth or see a larger expansion of LGBTQ stories about people of color. I think that is also a thing, like, he did make a point of, which I think is also important.
Yeah, because I think that's super important to acknowledge, because a lot of times, if there is gay representation in media, it's, like, skinny white gays.
Yes.
But
very stereotypical.
Like, the gay rights movement was led by trans women of color.
Yes.
Like, we need to kind of, like, acknowledge that and say, like, we're where we're at today because of queer people of color.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm very glad that he did make note of this, because I think just as much it is important for the LGBTQ stories to be told, but also specifically those people of color. Mm-hmm. I mean, 2020 was a huge, like, there was a huge civil rights movement that happened in 2020. So I think it is important to address people of color. Obviously, neither of us are people of color.
Yeah.
So we do have privilege in that aspect. But I think it is also important to acknowledge people of color, because everyone deserves to be represented and heard. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Rich, he mentioned shows like Pose, Veneno, Vida, 911, Lone Star, Love Victor. And he says that many other things have been told. So these are very recent shows. I have heard of Love Victor. I've also heard of Pose. I'm not very familiar with the other shows, though, but I'm assuming.
I've heard of some of them, but I haven't personally watched any of them yet. They're kind of on my list to get to.
Yes.
But
Pose is, I've actually been recommended to quite a few times by some of my friends, and I was recently watching some trailers for Pose, and it's not like one continuous cast. I think each season focuses on someone, like a different person's story. And I think they're on season 4 right now. That's the one that's about to come out. And they're focusing on a Black trans woman and her journey with coming out as trans. And also it brings back the culture of balls. So do you know balls? The culture of balls?
I'm kind of aware of them. I unfortunately don't know that much about, like, LGBT history, because they don't really teach it in school.
Yes.
But
so balls, from what I understand, so I actually learned balls through drag. Drag queens. Drag queens have taught me a lot. And so balls are just these huge gatherings of queer people. This, I believe, was specifically originated by queer people of color, specifically Black people, when they created the balls. And they're just these, like, giant, like, dance parties, basically. They all get together, and they're all, like, in costume. A lot of them are in drag, and they're just coming together for a giant celebration. And I believe they do touch upon this in Pose. I believe Billy Porter makes an appearance. I know that he has a huge influence on the community. Mm-hmm. And I really, really do appreciate the amount of things that he has been in, but also that he's now currently being in. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, like, when you get older, you get more introduced to, like, more actors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, when you're a kid, you don't really care who's in what. It's like, it's just, you care more about the movie.
Yeah.
So now that I know who Billy Porter is, I'm, like, realizing how much stuff he's been in and how much stuff he's going to be in. Mm-hmm. So to see him in this new season of Pose, I'm actually very excited, and I might actually start watching it. So is it Love Victor? Is Love Victor the thing, or is it Love and then Victor?
Love Victor is the show, kind of like a takeoff of Love, Simon, I think.
Okay.
I have not watched it yet, but I know one of my friends has, and I think he loved the show. It was, like, kind of emotional for him to watch it because he related so much, because it also does kind of touch on, like, the intersectionality, because Victor is Hispanic, I believe.
Okay.
And so my friend who has, like, recommended the show to me is gay and Mexican, and he's like, the little things of, like, the little, like, nickname, pet name that his parents refer to Victor as is the same thing that his parents call him.
Okay.
So he loved that because he connected to kind of this struggle of, like, the overlapping of, like, the culture and just general, like, coming out.
Yeah, I actually love that, because that's the thing, like, people can point out the little things, because you can say that it's not that important, but, like, it definitely shows. Like, if you see yourself represented on the TV, it's such a big deal.
Yeah. Like,
the fact that your friend could, like, was like, oh yeah, my parents also call me that. Like, that's really sweet. Mm-hmm. I actually love that. I know, because obviously I just made the comment of, like, how kids watch a lot of TV and whatnot. So, like, kids seeing themselves, like, on the TV, that's really cool. And I know, like, growing up as like, watching cartoons, a lot of them were animals. But if there were humans, they were usually white.
Yeah.
Very rarely did you see, like, people of color at least brought into, like, brought into, like, the light of, like, a main character. They're typically side characters. So it is really cool, in my opinion, to see, like, those stories be brought out.
Yeah. Just, it is always, like, oh, it's the, like, funny best friend. It's like, yeah, that's nice to see too, but to see yourself as the protagonist, whether we're talking about, like, race or like LGBT representation, like, that's just amazing.
I think that's so cool. It kind of reminds me of this video that I watched. Have you seen Beyonce's film Black is King?
I have not.
So this doesn't necessarily touch on LGBTQ representation, but this does touch on how kids are just so, like, they care about seeing themselves in films. So Black is King, I highly recommend it. It's on Disney+. Okay. It's supposed to be, like, there's a lot of parallels to, like, The Lion King, which is really cool. It's all, like, music. So it's based off this album that she released. So it's all songs from this album. And it's basically a visual album. It's really, really pretty, and it's very well done. And there's this one song, I just want to make sure I get the song correct, because her daughter, Blue Ivy, actually sings it with her, and it is super sweet. So she sings this song with her daughter. It is called, okay, yes, I was correct. It's called Brown Skin Girl, and the whole song is just about loving your skin and loving who you are and empowering women, specifically women of color. And I was watching this video, and it's these two little girls. They're, like, maybe, like, 4 or 5 years old. And this movie is, like, playing on in the background. Like, it's on the TV. And these two little girls are, like, dancing to it. And there's a scene in the film when these two girls, like, just hug each other. And the two little girls, like, look at the screen and then look at each other and also hug each other. It is so sweet. They're just, like,
adorable.
I know. It's so cute. And I think, like, the caption was, like, this is why representation matters. Because when you see yourself on the TV, you get excited because you've, like, it's like, oh, like, it's almost like you matter.
Yeah.
Like, you're being seen. And I think, like, as a kid, I didn't really realize, like, how much I took advantage of that. Like, seeing myself, like, in terms of color.
Absolutely.
Like, that's one thing. But I also think, like, in terms of seeing characters who are, like, identify as gay or, like, anything within the community, I get really excited.
Yeah. I remember, it's making me think of, there's, like, a short film animation thing called In a Heartbeat that came out in 2017.
Yes.
So even though I was, you know, like, I think in high school.
Yeah.
I was in high school by then, yeah. So I was a bit older, but I watched that and I cried for so long afterwards because I'm like, it's a cartoon that's kind of targeted for kids about, like, just, you know, like, queer kids, like, having crushes and, like, falling in love, and I just cried.
I remember seeing that too. I thought it was so sweet. I remember when that, like, was announced, like, they were gonna release it, and I was so excited. And yeah, I think, like, that it was absolutely and I think it was well done too.
Oh yeah,
because it's targeting, like, a younger demographic, because there are, like, they're schoolboys.
Yeah,
they're in school, so it's just showing, like, kids having crushes.
Exactly, because that's something that I just wish I had more of as a kid.
Yeah.
Because then I've had the, like, realizations now of, like, oh, in kindergarten I think I had a crush on this girl.
Yeah.
That's why I really, really wanted to be her friend. Like,
yeah.
So I feel like if you have, like, cartoons like this normalizing, like, queer crushes, it's just like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is alright
then.
This is
fine.
This is fine.
This is fine. Yeah, I think, like, I feel like as a kid, like, if I were to see more of that, I definitely wouldn't have been as awkward for me to, like, when I did kind of connect the dots.
Yeah.
Because then once you find out, it's almost, like, taboo, like, oh, I can't tell anyone now. Now it's a secret.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I figured it out. Like,
there's kind of the realization that, oh, crap. And then the, like, okay, now what?
Yeah, what am I gonna do now? I remember when I found out, like, at least, like, I kind of came to the conclusion, I couldn't say it out loud.
Okay.
Because then it would be, like, it'd almost been, like, it'd been true. Like, oh, I can't say it, because then it's gonna be real. Like, I couldn't even tell my dog, because I feel like he would rat me out as if he could speak.
The one time your dog talks is to out you to your family.
Like, it was true.
Yeah.
Because I always say, like, oh, and I tell my dog everything. But I can't tell him I'm bisexual. That's ridiculous. Yeah. He's gonna tell everyone.
I know, even when I did kind of, like, get to a point where I could, like, tell my closest friends, I had a really hard time just saying it straight up. I think I came out with a pun. Like, a terrible pun of, like, if I'm correct, and this is terrible, feel free to judge me.
Yeah.
It was like, let's get one thing straight. I'm not. Because it was still difficult for me to look my friends in the eye and be like, I'm bi.
Yeah. I think I texted my friends. I said it through text because I think it would have been easier. And I told them all separately.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think for me, I went with a friend, like, I went with, like, people who I knew were just gonna, like, not ask any questions. It was like, I know you're not gonna look too much into it, so let me just tell you.
Yeah.
And then the last person I told, like, out of my friends, the last person I told was, in fact, my crush.
Me too!
Like, the reason why I didn't tell her, because, like, and then I had to clarify, I'm like, I'm not, I didn't tell you last because it's not that I didn't think you'd support me, it was just other things. And I'm not going to tell you what those other things are, but don't take it personal, sweetheart.
I had a similar struggle, because the last like in my first round of coming out, I guess, the last person that I told was my best friend since, like, first grade. Mm-hmm. So, like, she's always been by my side. I had a bit of a crush on her at the time.
Yeah.
Has since passed. But I was like, I can't tell her because even though I'm sure she would support me, and she does.
Yeah.
But, like, if I lose that friendship, I have no idea what that would do. That would just be too devastating. Because it was like, the two other friends I had told, I obviously loved them, was very close to them, but it wouldn't be as heartbreaking, I think. And that was something that I think was a struggle for both of us. Just she told me later, where it's like, I'm hurt that you didn't come out to me first. And like, I could not think of losing you.
Right. It's that's what it came down to. Mm-hmm. Like, it was almost like kind of prioritizing, like, okay, I'm gonna tell you because I know you're not gonna, like, think too much of it.
Yeah.
To the point where it, like, could damage our relationship. I mean, there's some people that I told that I'm no longer friends with.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they're now gonna know that forever, but I don't think it's gonna change their life. Hasn't done anything wrong to me since. So, I think, yeah. So, as well as Rich was complimenting the idea of representation increasing in the media, he also has mentioned that there's things that need to be worked on. And we also mentioned this very early on, so we're kind of on the same page with Richie over here.
Wow.
Wow, great minds think alike. So, quote by quote, it says, however, we're still seeing unrepresentation of many groups within our own community, including bisexual and transgender people, disabled LGBTQ people, and people living with HIV. So we kind of touched base on how, like, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, those terms aren't being well used.
Yeah.
But they also bring up, like, people with disabilities and even people living with HIV, which I think is also something that is important to touch base on.
Because that's such a major part of, like, LGBT history.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think, because obviously we were too young, we weren't alive during the AIDS epidemic, but, like, that is something that was so terrible and, like, widespread, and it's not even talked about. It's taboo.
Right.
But that impacted the community so much. I think it should be discussed more, and it still is something that's kind of ongoing.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do know Sesame Street.
I love Sesame Street.
Classic childhood favorite. Grew up watching a bunch of Sesame Street as a kid. They recently celebrated their 50th anniversary, and they had a television special talking about the growth for Sesame Street and the stuff that they addressed. Because one thing I never noticed as a kid is how many boundaries how many walls they broke down through Sesame Street. Because the thing is, like, because as a kid, like, again, like, obviously representation is important, but as kids, that's just normal. Whatever's on the TV is kind of, like, normal.
Yeah,
like,
you don't have anything to compare it to.
If it's on the TV, it's okay. And I think that's why, like, just the media in general is so important, because it does have a major influence on the audience. So, the reason why I bring up Sesame Street, I brought it up for a couple reasons. So, as I was watching the special, they brought up that they had so Sesame Street was a like worldwide, and they would have different, like, interpretations of Sesame Street throughout the world, like different characters for the different regions of the world. And I believe it was, like, South Africa, so they had it filming in South Africa. And one of the little, like, monster kids that they had was a little girl who was born with HIV. And so the population in South Africa, there's a lot of people, like, HIV is something that is quite common, or, like, is definitely more spoken about in South Africa. So for them to see, like, this little girl with, like, and I mean, she's just like everyone else. Like, she, like, is playing with all the kids, like, definitely a very likable character. Like, all the little kids love this character. And it was just like, oh, she also just has HIV. Like, that's exactly what they did. They talked about it. It wasn't like it was, like, brushed to a side. No, they talked about it. They addressed it. But they also made her just like any other character.
That's the kind of representation that I love, that I think we need a lot more of.
Yeah.
Where, even though it is an important part of, you know, who they are, whether it is talking about living with HIV or just in general, like being queer, it's obviously an important part of their identity, but it's not the only part of their identity.
Right, exactly.
Like, they're a human being, and this is just one of multiple parts of them. Yeah.
Which is, like, what I loved, because I didn't know that. Because obviously, like, none of the, like, that wasn't necessarily, I mean, maybe it would have been great to have a character like that in in the American version. And kind of stick into Sesame Street, you know, walking down memory lane. I don't know when this news was brought forth, maybe you know, but when everyone was making the whole deal of Bert and Ernie being a gay couple. Like, when was that, like, addressed? Like, do you remember when that was, like, first announced?
Sure. I feel like it was fairly recent. Like, within the past 5 or so years.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't know. Because, I remember reading that, like, an article about it. Like, I want to say, like, let's say, like, 2018. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think that's when I read the article. I don't know if they announced it earlier on. But I remember when they made that announcement and, like, the creators confirmed it. Like, or, like, the writers confirmed it. But it was so interesting because, like, everyone, like, flipped about it. They're like, everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, they're gay.
Think of the children.
Think of the children. But the thing is, like, it was just, like, a statement.
Yeah, nothing changed.
Nothing changed. And I like to say this a lot about, like, potential couples in movies and TV shows where it's like, oh, they could be gay, but nothing's been confirmed.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, looking at, like, Bert and Ernie, I'm like, yeah, that checks out. Like, that makes, like, I'm not gonna be like, I didn't see it coming. But, I mean, it's not like they own to, like, stereotypes. And I think that's exactly what it is. Like, people didn't see it because they weren't, like, that wasn't their character.
Yeah.
Like, their one character trait was not being gay. So it just seems so, like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
How am I supposed to tell that they're gay? They're not, like, wearing feather boas and, like, talking about Judy Garland or what other stereotypes there are. Like, these are just puppets. What do you mean?
Yeah, guy puppets that just live together. I mean, there's people who thought they were, like, brothers, but I don't think anything was confirmed in the way that they were brothers.
There's tons of, like, Frog and Toad. They're gay.
Yeah.
Timon and Pumbaa, Lion King 1.5. Not confirmed, but
come on.
It's a movie about a wonderful couple trying to find a home and then raising their son.
Their adopted son.
Their adopted son. It
is pretty great. And I would like to also add on to that point for further pushing. So if you're unaware of the Lion King franchise, all the movies are based off of Shakespearean plays. If you've been living under a rock, Lion King is based off of Hamlet. There is a sequel to Lion King 2. Not that great of a film. No. Not good at all. But it is based off of the Shakespearean play Romeo and Juliet. And Lion King 1.5 has been told, like, the creators have confirmed this, that it is based off of a sequel to, I want to say that it is the sequel to Romeo and Juliet. It is either the sequel to Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet, but it is based off of these two side characters. I'm going to say that it is Romeo and Juliet. Two side characters. While the main story is happening, is these two side characters, and their life is gay lovers. Come on.
Fantastic.
Honey, look at the material. Like,
look at the source material. It's right there.
It's right there. I mean, yes.
There's not a heterosexual explanation.
And the thing is, with exactly. But the thing is, like with Lion King 1.5, I love this movie. I could talk about this movie.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I could talk about this movie all day.
If you haven't seen Lion King 1.5, go do that right now.
Please watch it. Again, on Disney Plus. You won't regret it. There's great musical number right off the bat.
Absolutely.
I don't even know. Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Another reason, like, why I think it, like, that movie, if they just were to confirm it, I wouldn't need anything else.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't need, like, because the thing is, yes, we can say this movie, like, has no, like, hetero explanation for it. This movie's not straight. We can say that. But, again, it is very subtle.
Yeah.
It's not in your face. Like, kind of what we were saying with the gay stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not super flashy in that retrospect. It's realistic. It's a couple raising a kid.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally just say that, and that's enough. Like, that's why I feel like, I think with Sesame Street, just confirming it, I think was enough.
Exactly. We don't need to, it's a children's, like, media. You don't need to have them be, like, making out. Like, no.
Right. Yeah, of course. It's a children's program.
Like, that's not necessarily how you should show relationships. That's not the most important part. Mm-hmm. Just to confirm, like, oh yeah, these two characters, they're in a loving relationship. Yeah. And you go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. I feel like they should do that with a lot of shows. I know there's a lot of, like, cartoons specifically from the 90s. I know, like, people have been, like, asking, like, the creators, like, can you just confirm this already? Can you just say these characters are gay just for the sake of it?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like, it's, at this point, it's like, what's holding them back from just saying, like, oh yeah, my apologies for upstairs. It is finals week. People are moving and, you know.
Vacuuming, maybe?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's vacuuming. It sounds like a race car, but I think it's a vacuum. Yeah. So, my apologies. We couldn't get a fancy studio space for this. I'm a college student. I can't afford that.
We don't have money.
But yeah, I definitely think, like, I'm like, what is, like, at this point, even, like, what's holding them back?
I think with some things, I guess this is possibly more of, like, newer media, things that are still coming out, is they want to still be able to market it to other countries that might be, you know, like, more homophobic.
Yeah.
Like, especially with anything owned by Disney,
yes.
They're like, oh, we have a groundbreaking gay character, but it's Avengers Endgame. It's an extra, or I think it was one of the directors, on screen for less than a minute. Yeah. Briefly mentions, like, oh yeah, my partner, or, like, my husband, like, disappear or something. It's like, that's not representation. That's not it.
Do you remember? Have you seen the Pixar movie Onward?
It's like the...
Yeah, where the character, she says my wife. And I'm like, oh! That's... Of course, like, my gay ass was like, yes, she said it! Good for her!
Or LeFou in the new Beauty and the Beast. I was, like, so shook. I was like, oh my god! And
he
danced with a man. That was it.
He's my new favorite character.
I know.
He's
Josh Gad.
Josh Gad, thank you so much. Thank you.
But it's like, that's nothing. Like, they're throwing us breadcrumbs. And because we are so starved of any representation, it's just like...
We're just accepting it.
It's... I hate to have this comparison because I feel like it's really stupid, but Disney is someone with a loaf of bread in a park who throws a little speck of crust, and we are, like, the LGBT community is a flock of pigeons just going for that crumb.
Honestly,
even though they've got the whole loaf, they can give everyone bread. Yeah. But they're just
it's true.
Sprinkler crumbs.
Because the thing is, I mean, Disney's such a huge franchise, and I love Disney movies. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna go out and say Disney movies because I don't necessarily know the
Disney owns everything.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know my opinion on the entire franchise, but I do love Disney movies. So obviously, I'm gonna watch the movie no matter what. Mm-hmm. But I remember what you mentioned, like Beauty and the Beast. I remember there was like an article, like huge controversy with Beauty and the Beast, but they never specified what the controversy was in the title. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, what's so controversial about it? Like, what is going on? And I remember it was on the news.
Oh my God.
It was on News 12 in Wisconsin. Wisconsin mentioned how there's a gay character, but they never told you who it was. They just said there's a gay character, or like a character being represented as gay, and I'm like,
that offers so much comedic potential just for me. Of like, oh my God, Gaston is gay. Like,
oh my God.
I'll take that and run with it and say every character is actually queer. Just all of them. Like, I mean, have you seen Lumiere? That man's not straight. Like, if you don't specify it,
right? And then I remember watching the movie, and like I almost like completely forgot about it, just because the controversy was discussed for maybe like 2 days, and then like nothing happened with it.
Yeah.
So I remember watching the movie in theaters. Fantastic, by the way. Mm-hmm. Absolutely loved it. And I just remember, like, just watching it and experiencing it. And the good old LeFou comes on, and I'm like, oh, hell yeah. This is it. And, oh my goodness. Did you catch the gay pun in that movie? There's a gay pun.
Oh, it's been a while since I've seen it.
So... I love this. This is called good directing, people. Good screenwriting. So there's, the scene where they're all like attacking each other in the castle. Mm-hmm. So this is very later on in the movie. Spoiler alert.
In case you don't know the plot of Beauty and the Beast.
So they're all attacking each other, and there's the wardrobe.
Oh, we love her. Audra McDonald's voice.
Yes.
Right? Oh,
fantastic.
Amazing.
Great cast.
Honestly.
So there's the 3 guys. It's Tom, Dick, and Stanley. Tom, Dick, and Stanley. 3 guys. So they're like facing the wardrobe, right? It's a standoff between a wardrobe and 3 guys.
Who will win?
Who will win? And so the wardrobe, she just like casts all these fabrics like onto the guys. And they come out in these, like, gorgeous, like, Victorian dresses. 2 of the guys are mortified. Like, oh, my God, I'm wearing a dress! And they just run off. And the other guy, he's feeling his oats. He is, like, living his fantasy.
As he should.
And she goes, go on, live your best life. Like, she's just, like, hyping him up. And he just goes, thank you. And just, like, walks down. He came out of the closet. Just came out of the closet.
Good.
And he's the guy that LeFou was dancing with. That's him. That's Stanley.
That's my favorite drag queen.
Wig.
I don't know about you.
Pattern wig.
RuPaul? I don't know him. I only know Stanley from Beauty and the Beast.
He looks so good. But
like,
yes.
It's sad that, like, that we're like, yeah, representation is an implied pun.
I know. And I just remember, like, watching it and, like, oh, yes. But, again, it is, like, it is sad that that's, like, the only thing we're really gonna get. Oh. Like, who knows, like, if Disney will actually do something. Like, they've gotten close. Like, close, but no cigar.
Yeah. Because again, I like Marvel movies, so that's something that I can talk about quite a bit. Mm-hmm. there are multiple characters that people are like, that's...
Yeah.
There's no straight explanation for that. The main one that I'm thinking of is Captain Marvel. Oh my god. Mm-hmm. Her movie was just her and her gal pal, and it's like, they are like, they're married.
Really?
They should be. They act like it. They raised a child together.
Yeah.
And like, it's just very like queer coded, but Marvel and I guess Disney, because they're in charge of it all, they're just cowards. They won't do it. They can't say it.
Right. I think, and that's just the thing. It's like the taboo of it all. And I think it is because of marketing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
It's just the number of moments where it's like, oh, if this character was of the opposite sex, they'd be dating.
Yeah,
like
this would be over. Like,
people make that connection a lot with Captain America and Bucky Barnes of like something that is repeated throughout like the trilogy of like, I'm with you till the end of the line. That's a little you know,
that's a little
fruity. And like, oh, you lose your memory and don't even know who you are, but you remember him. That's gay. Like, a little bit. If one of them was a woman, they'd be married by now, you know?
Yeah. So, as much as I love hearing about Rich from GLAAD, there's this other article that I found. It is from the newspaper source, a newspaper source plus. And so we are going up north into Toronto, Canada.
Oh, Canada.
So there is a Toronto. So there's a Canadian filmmaker. Her name is Gabrielle Zilka. My apologies if I am butchering that. I'm very so sorry, Gabrielle. But there is a documentary called Queering the Script, which pretty much talks about the experiences of LGBTQ representation in TV. So I'm pretty sure that this is more about Canada's television, but I think television is television.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. And I think I'm not necessarily going to talk about strictly the shows that she talks about just because we would have no way of watching them.
Yeah.
But when she talks about queering the script, she talks a lot about, this is actual quote. So the film looks at a lack of racial diversity in leading roles in LGBTQ representation on TV and the problem of queer baiting. So, in the show that hints that a character is queer in order to lure certain audiences, but doesn't deliver on that.
Oh my god, that makes me angry.
Just as there is the lack of representation, there is also the, like, falseness of it.
Oh yeah.
The inaccurate representation.
The first example that comes to mind is Riverdale. In the first episode, Betty and Veronica kiss. I started watching the show solely because of that.
And they're not together.
They're not together. They never... It was just like it was a shock value thing. That's the only reason it happened. And I sat through like 2.5 seasons of that show. Just
thinking that it was going to happen again.
Waiting for it.
Yeah.
Like, I wasted so much time.
But it goes to show that it works.
Yeah.
Like, as much as queer baiting is not a good thing, like, I do not support it.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it, actually. It's just incredibly infuriating. But, like, kind of like what you were saying with your whole, like, pigeon metaphor. Like, the slightest of crumb, like, the smallest of crumbs are going to attract the flock. Like,
my simple pigeon brain is just so excited at the thought of bread that don't even think that it's a crumb.
Right. Like, I mean, like, the fact that it's true. It's so true. Like, you're promised, like, oh yeah, there's a gay couple in this show, and I'm like, I'm listening. Mm-hmm. Like, please tell me more. Like, it is very interesting. Some of the shows that I have been recommended by some of my other fellow queer friends, they would recommend a show to me, And I'm like, but is it, like, gay or is it, like, straight gay?
Oh, yeah.
Like, when I meet, and for people who have no idea what I'm talking about,
I feel like this is something that's confusing for, like, straight people. They're like, what do you mean?
What do you mean? Straight gay is what the straights think gays are.
Yeah.
Or at least, like, it's based off stereotypes. Literally. Like when we talk about, like, shows like Bert and Ernie and, like, Timon and Pumbaa, you know, children's characters, like, the simplicity of it, the realism of it, that's just gay. But if you were to harshly stereotype the idea of that, then that's stereotyping, and then you're going on to the ideas of queer baiting, which is not great. So this director, so she goes on about how some of the characters that have been in some of the shows that she has done. So she says, the article says, as the doc shows, some of these characters have inspired and empowered viewers, while others have been crafted with cliche tropes and killed off for shock value or in the service of straight characters' storylines. And have many of those characters killed off have been people of color. Mm-hmm. So, exactly, it's like bringing in, like, they're kind of used as, like, a prop.
Oh, yeah. I think there's, like, a name for it. I want to say it's, like, bury your gays. Like, it's a whole thing where it's like, oh, there's a queer character, they're gonna die.
Yeah, like, it is insane. Like, and So I'm just currently looking at this article. So it seems like, from what she has taught, so because Zilka, she is also queer. They haven't specified exactly her sexuality, but she does identify as part of the community. Mm-hmm. And she has spoken on about how, like, so she grew up in Montreal, and so it says here that she said that the queer characters on the L Word, which I'm assuming is
I know it's a lesbian TV show, and that's all I know about it.
The L Word. L stands for lesbians.
I think that's what it is.
Gave her a sense of hope and direction about her life and could look like after she came out of the closet. So, like, in some words, like, having those gay characters, it's like, it's empowering. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I'm being represented. But it also seems like a lot of the times they're being, like, put into, like, these harsh cliches that aren't necessarily, like, appropriate or true.
Like, a lot of the times, if there is queer representation with, like, main characters, it's only about, like, coming out. That's all that it focuses on, which is good, but when that's the only representation you have, it's like, okay, but then what happens next? Am I allowed to actually live and be happy?
Right.
Because you just get, like, 5 minutes at the end of the movie that shows that.
Yeah.
It's either that, or this is specifically with, like, queer women, overly sexualized.
Oh, for sure.
I would like to watch a rom-com that isn't either about being disowned by your family and isn't straight up pornography.
Yes.
I would like an actual, just a normal movie, please. And it's not there. It doesn't exist.
And she actually talks about that, like, how when, like, doing these television shows and there is queer representation, it is very hard on queer women characters because they're being overly sexualized, and it like again, like, it's queer baiting, and it's, like, attracting, like, these, like, audiences that you shouldn't be attracting.
A lot of, like, lesbian representation is made for the pleasure of straight men.
Yes.
And that's a load of garbage.
Yeah, it's true. And, I mean, like, and that's the thing. And I really appreciate, like, her talking about this because she's a director. So she obviously, like, has been, like, in the position of, like, seeing how actors, like, interact with making stuff. And she's, like, saying how she, like, didn't realize, like, how poorly lesbians are being represented and also treated on set, like, until she was, like, actually doing it. Because you can see all this stuff on camera, but you're never going to know what's behind the scenes unless you are, like, one of the crew members.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that is a huge issue as well. It's just kind of the queer baiting. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily like it's like, oh, there's representation. It's like, but it's false.
It's not.
It's false.
Or it's like you're giving us some subtext and refusing to confirm anything. Right. Like, that's not representation. That's
not representation at all.
That's just disappointing.
Yeah. Yeah, just disappointed. Kind of what you're talking about, like how a lot of stories that are pointed at a gay main character, it is usually a coming out story. Mm-hmm. And I am just like any other person. Coming out is very difficult to do. It's very hard to do. It is very hard. Yeah. I'm not going to deny. Some people it is harder than others, mm-hmm. especially with the circumstances and the situations that they're in. But I think at this point, there have been really good movies that have addressed that, and I think we now need to move on from that.
Absolutely.
There's this movie, you might have heard of it. It's on Hulu. Let me just pull it up so I don't.
Happiest Season?
Happiest Season, is that what it is?
I think so.
So, yes, Happiest Season. So it recently came out in 2020 on Hulu during the holidays. And, so I'm not a huge, like, romance movie kind of person.
Yeah.
Specifically if it's a holiday romance movie. Oh. I'm not about it. I'm not about the cliches. Yeah. I watched a drag queen special. That's what I did this past Christmas.
Your Christmases are just Muppets Christmas Carol and drag queen specials.
Drag queen specials.
I respect that.
Yeah, that was also on Hulu. So the Happiest Season. So I remember seeing there was tons of trailers for it. They advertised the heck out of this movie, and so Kristen Stewart, who is a very good actress, has been recently getting back to the game in the industry. Mm-hmm. I believe is openly bisexual.
I'm not quite sure. I know she's not straight.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. So she is starring in this movie. And the whole idea is that she's going to propose to her girlfriend on Christmas. And so they get invited to her girlfriend's family's holiday party. And apparently her girlfriend had not come out to her parents. So, but they are going to the party together as a couple of gal pals.
There's a similar movie, I think it's called Jenny's Wedding, where it is a lesbian couple that is engaged.
Yes.
And one of them is not out to her family. They just literally think it's gal pals. It's like, oh, your roommate. And it's like, man, that's her fiance. Like, they are straight up engaged.
Yes.
And like, I really...
Okay, that is a very realistic situation. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like, they advertised it, like, I'm pretty sure is, like, queer baiting. Because we all know that they're a lesbian couple. Mm-hmm. But then it comes down to, like, the horrors of coming out. And I didn't watch it. So I'm not gonna necessarily, like... But I'm assuming it's kind of a comedy. I mean, I believe Dan Levy's in this.
He is.
And he's supposedly a funny man. Making the jokes.
Roasted him down.
I don't know. I don't watch a lot of stuff with him. Like, I appreciate his work.
Yeah.
I just don't know him that well.
You're not best friends with Dan Levy.
I'm not best friends with Daniel Levy. Best friends with Catherine O'Hara. But I do, like, I just, for some reason, I'm like, I don't think I can handle another movie where it's just, no. Because it's either going to be, like, they're not supportive or they are. And it's going to be underwhelming either way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's just in a feel uncomfy, I think.
Yes.
Like, again, I'm just kind of sick of movies that are only about coming out. Because
there's more to
There's more to life than that, right? It's not just the fear of being in the closet, the fear of, oh my god, what if I'm outed? Like, yes. It's only showing kind of the negative parts. You don't really get much of, like, the, like, oh no, it's okay. Like, I can survive, I can do this. Yeah. Like, you only get that at the very end of the movie.
Right. And that's the thing. It kind of brings it down to the idea that being gay is a personality trait. Mm-hmm. Because if the whole story is them coming out, then you're just focusing on them being gay. Yeah. Which, like, is not what we want. No. It's not what I want.
If you're gonna make a gay holiday rom-com, like, kind of like Hallmark Channel movie, have the exact same plot, same tropes, where it's like, oh, busy businesswoman goes to a small town and falls in love with this beautiful innkeeper.
Yeah, who just so happens to be a woman. Yeah.
Preferably played by Aubrey Plaza.
I love Aubrey Plaza.
Oh, God, me too. That's all I have to say. She's got to be in there.
She's got to be in there. But I do think, like, that's exactly what it is. I don't think I can handle another movie like that. Mm-hmm. And so, like, when I saw the trailers, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna watch it, because I know exactly how this is gonna happen. I know exactly. Apparently, obviously, I don't know the ending, but apparently the ending is disappointing.
I've just heard, because I also have not seen it, I've just heard that it is disappointing because Kristen Stewart's character does not end up with Aubrey Plaza's character. That's I've heard people complaining. That's the upset.
And that she didn't end up with her non-fiancé?
Yes, just I think Aubrey Plaza plays, like, her fiancé's ex. So they're both kind of like, okay, I know what it's like to be in a relationship where she's very in the closet and we are not, and, like...
They go to a drag show together.
See, the only reason I would watch this movie is not for the plot, but just for the actresses. Yeah. Like, the plot sounds terrible.
I've done that, where you've seen a movie strictly for the actor, even the movie is absolute garbage.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen Tron?
We watched that for Michael Sheen, who got killed off after 20 minutes of screen time.
The audacity. It's like a 2-hour film. An hour in, he finally shows up, dances for a little bit, cracks a couple jokes, and then dies. Then I had to finish the movie because I wanted to be respectful. God, rough, Tron Legacy. Horrible movie. Talk about that later. Because there's nothing gay about that movie, except maybe Michael Sheen's character. But again, dies.
Come on.
Because he was a very flamboyant character.
See, they can't have that. People ask me questions like, why is he saying it like that? Like,
why is he dancing like that? Why is he dressed like that? Why does he look...
That's a little suspicious there.
Why does he have a mullet?
We're gonna have to kill him. Like, that's what the directors are thinking. Yes. And again with, like, this is prime example of uncomfortable, like, kind of coming out movies is... Yeah. But I'm a cheerleader. We have to talk about that.
We have to talk about But I'm a cheerleader.
While I'm aware, I'm sure that was, like, groundbreaking, because I know it's a bit of an older movie. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh my god, like, actually showing, like, lesbians, what? But watching it is so uncomfortable. Like, there's something about it that, like, it sets off your fight or flight responses just a little bit. Because they're at, like, a conversion therapy camp. Yeah. So it's just, like... I don't want this. I don't want to see this. I'm already scared of this.
Yeah. It was so funny. We watched it and we're like, oh, this is going to be, like, really bad. But not necessarily bad as in, like, the plot, but more just bad writing. Yeah. And we were watching it and I just didn't know what to think. Like, because, she goes to this conversion camp, but it's not just, like... It's a weird conversion camp. Like, if you ever seen Cat in the Hat,
it's
live
not the
action
same energy.
With Mike Myers, just the universe with how colorful and, like, loony everything looks, that's what the conversion camp looked like. Mm-hmm. RuPaul was in it. Played a quote-unquote straight guy who at least tried to convince the world that he was straight. It was a very, very weird movie.
Like, a little part of me was like, that's a horror movie masquerading as a rom-com. Just, it's like, there's, throughout the whole thing, you're like, this is just off. Like, the universe is off. It's obviously messed up with, like, conversion camps.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ.
Because the thing is, it's like, on one hand, you're like, there's no way that this could be, like, supported by the queer community. Mm-hmm. But then you see a character like RuPaul Charles, and it's like, but he's in it, so it must be fine. Yeah. Like, there must be, like, it can't be that offensive. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, because half the time I was like, I don't know if I should be laughing or should be offended. Yeah. Like, yeah. And I think a lot of the movie did kind of play on stereotypes. Because, I mean, there was a the character was a lesbian. Yeah. And I believe there was a sex scene.
I think so.
It was very discreet. It was very, it was very, like, under the covers.
Yeah. So I will appreciate that about it. It wasn't pornography.
Yes, it wasn't straight up porn, but there was that scene. Yeah. And then all the boys were very...
I believe the character's name is, like, Andre, who was dancing
just
in a gay bar with... voguing with, like, a feather boa.
With a feather boa.
Like, that's...
Yeah, that is definitely... Yeah. Limp hand. Limp hand gesture. Sorry. It's okay. But yeah, I definitely think that movie was that... I don't know. We'd have to talk about that movie completely on its own. That's its own thing, because, like, we'd have to start from the very beginning, and then, like...
Just, there's so many moments where you're watching, you're like, oh, this is really messed up. Like, it's framed comedically, so you're, like, kind of laughing, but then you're like, oh, no, this is something that, like, actually happens, though. Like, people have experienced this.
And it makes, like, I have never gone to a conversion.
Me neither, thankfully.
Yes, thankfully. So I don't know, but it just seemed very satirical. Yeah. And, like, I don't necessarily know what the directors, like, what their, like, direction was. Like, what they wanted it to do. It seemed like a comedy.
I think it was meant to be satirical.
I think it was supposed to be a comedy. It was just, like... As queer people watching it, it was like, I don't know if this should be, like, am I supposed to laugh? Like, I don't know.
Because it's one of those things where I'm like, I've talked about being afraid of, like, conversion therapy. Yeah. Like, while I was, like, in therapy, like, just regular therapy. Yeah. I've talked about how it gives me so much anxiety, just, like, as a concept. Yeah. So to see, like, a whole movie about it, I'm like... Yeah, it has funny moments, but this is also, like, if I watched that movie in, like, 7th or 8th grade, I think I would have cried myself to sleep. That's all I have to say about that.
Because, spoiler alert, I guess. So the main girl runs off with her crush.
She's a cheerleader.
Because she's a cheerleader. That's her excuse. She's like, I can't be gay. I'm a cheerleader. It's like, honey, okay, you can do both. You can be both. It's not one or the other. As if, like, cheerleader's a euphemism for being straight. But I'm a cheerleader. Dude, you're a cheerleader.
You have to come out to your parents, Mom, Dad, I'm a cheerleader. Oh, God, no!
No, not a cheerleader.
My beautiful daughter, where did I go wrong? Like, no.
Yeah, I don't know. That is one weird-ass movie. Yeah. I'm assuming that's, like, an 80s movie?
I would say 90s.
80s, 90s?
But there's just something that's off-putting about it. And I can't quite put it into words. It feels simultaneously very gay, but also a little bit homophobic.
Yes. Yes.
Like, I'm curious of, like, if the person who, like, wrote the script, if they're queer or not. Because if that was written by a straight person, I feel like that would explain some things.
So I just looked it up. So Brian Wayne Peterson is the person that did the screenplay, which is the writing.
Mm-hmm. He is gay.
He is. Okay.
That makes me feel better.
That does make me feel better. Because it's one thing to have, like, and that's kind of going into kind of what Zilka was talking about. Because not only is she a female director, she's also a queer director.
Mm-hmm.
So she does have a lot of insight in that, and which I think gives her the absolute right to talk on the subject.
Yeah.
So I actually do appreciate...
I think that's what's important with queer representation, is having queer directors, writers, producers, etc. Like, I think that's what's super important with it all. That's what makes it feel more real, I guess.
Yeah.
And not just like a caricature, you know?
Yes. So I definitely, I agree. It's, okay, so the director is Jamie Babbitt. I read that as Jamie Rabbit. But it's Jamie Babbitt. She's the director for Gilmore Girls. Wow. Talk about.
And she is also queer.
Okay.
It does not say specifically that I can find, but...
So I guess it's okay then.
Yeah.
Okay. I will say this. I'm not going to say it's a complete okay. Because you can still create offensive stuff.
Obviously.
So I'm not going to say that the way that I feel about the movie has not changed.
Yeah. It's slightly comforting, but it's still kind of like, I don't know. I don't think I would recommend that experience necessarily.
Yeah. I don't know if I would. Yeah. I mean, if you want to watch like a movie like that, if that sounds interesting to you, it is free on YouTube.
Yeah.
Plus ads. Yeah, interesting film.
Yeah.
Interesting film. So I feel like we've touched a lot on this particular subject. I'm pretty satisfied with the points that we made. Mm-hmm. And we got to hear the lovely opinions from Gabrielle Zilka from Toronto, Canada. And Rich Ferraro, I'm assuming, because there's the 2 R's. Yeah. I took Spanish for 5 years. I know that.
Wow.
Thank you.
What a flex. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm assuming there's like kind of a rolling of R's? I don't know. That's
sure.
My Spanish teacher telling me that I had to do that. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Hopefully we can talk more about Lion King 1.5 and
of course.
But I'm a Cheerleader. Because that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys soon. Maybe not. Depends.
Ooh, a little bit of mystery.
Who knows? It's finals week, all right? Who knows what's gonna happen? All right. Bye, guys.